corrections and institutions. It is Thursday, January 23rd, or it's 11 o'clock. It's a little bit later than we started. Wanted to start, the break was a little longer. So we have Joe Asia back with us, continuing going through our FY 24 and 25 capital budget. We're starting on section 18, which deals with our cash fund. These are general fund dollars that go towards capital projects. And we're starting with statewide planning, reuse, and contingency. And it's on supposedly page 21. If you're doing electronic for us in the paper, it's about halfway through. This appropriation matches, there is bonded dollars for planning, reuse, and contingency. And the bonded dollars that we put in for that is 880,000 for the 2 years on top of the cash. So Joe, it's all yours.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Joe Asia, the Director for Design and Construction with Buildings and General Services. Chair said, section 18 in the cash fund. First up is statewide planning, reuse, and contingency. And it was stated that yes, there was also bonded funds for this also. And so now there's additional cash that was also provided so that we can get into some additional planning, some space, and also contingency. As you mentioned earlier, projects are coming in higher than we expect, only because of the bidding climate. It's not due to, poor estimating. It's just that prices are changing on a daily basis. We're just not sure what is out there. Some of it is also how much on the contingency side is, how much of a renovation prep do you do in advance when you renovate a space? Do you open up a wall to see what's in the wall? And older buildings, it's very interesting how they constructed in the past that, you find things hidden in the wall that you do not expect. You also find things in the ground that we do not expect. Best laid plans that somebody has handed you are not always correct. Even with DigSafe, we found extra things. One of those fun things. So that's what the planning, reuse, and contingency is used for.
And you're going to see this in every governor's budget, this line item. This is ongoing.
Next up, McFarland building, the re-roof and brick facade repair. We also had bonded funds for this project. This is to hopefully finish out this project. It started with, as you can see in the picture here, in the parapet. It's seen better days with the project that was falling off with the brickwork. We also had asbestos in the caulking, and that had to be dealt with before we could do the roofing. And I don't believe that it has ever been repointed in the time that it's been there. There had been McFarland as a hospital put on 2 wings from what was originally constructed. We renovated it back in late 80s and converted it into office space. And so this is sort of a major renovation of the exterior. One of the, is it good?
Yes,
I'd like it.
What'd you say?
the McFarland House re-roof thing, it's looking good. Wow.
There is one section that we had found, they used to be known as sun porches. Where the patients were sun porches. Patients go out and sit. It's just, it was a roofed and glassed in area. Now it's used as office space, but when we knew there were integral wood gutters and we knew we had some rot going on, until we took the roof off, we just didn't know how bad it was. It was very interesting that the ceiling's sort of holding up the rotted joists that's holding the roof up and the roof's holding everything else up. It's all integrated. So we're having to replace all of the joists. Or sister new ones on some of them. So that was an unexpected find that we've come across. So this rework is just about done. We're still doing some re-roofing and interior work. We still have to, because of the amount of leaks that we had on this roof, going back inside and also repairing all of the surfaces that were damaged, walls and floors.
And-
That's for the heat recovery.
Yeah, that was my question.
Heat recovery is that for this day and age with the energy, what you're doing is any of the exhausted is going out, you're bringing in fresh air to replace that. That's a civilized box that captures that heat as it's going out and it's transferring it to the colder air coming in. So it transfers some of that. So that is that heat recovery unit. So that it's not 100% cold air. So like the past couple of days when it was -7 out or something like that, it's tempering that air as much as it can as the amount of exhaust air that is going. So it's an energy.
Basically uses exhaust, but like, yeah, heat exchangers, like,
Got it.
it's just preheating.
Cool.
32 Cherry Street parking garage repairs. Long story of parking garage repairs. Thankfully, 108 is on its way out, hopefully.
Okay.
And at 32, the damage is not as extensive as it is over at the 108 Cherry Street parking garage. For this one here is additional cash that goes on top of some of the bonded money that we've had in the past. And this is going in, and you can see in the photo here, a little bit of the rebar that has been exposed. So salt is very bad in our parking garage. There's not enough airflow in there.
You said salt. How does salt get up there?
Because you're parking above that.
Oh, and it seeps through.
Yes, so I don't believe in 32 Cherry Street, but if you went into 108, there's even, some stalactites in there because of the amount of that corrosion that's going on. And it just, once it gets into the rebar is just raw steel. And then it starts to rust, and that rust expands and then just starts bumping out the concrete, and it produces failure. So this work is to go in and expose all the rusted rebar, replace it, patch it, put it back. That also includes a membrane that goes on there and a wearing surface. And that wearing surface is one of the issues that we haven't done as good of a job of maintenance over the years. But it is difficult because of studded tires, because it is a membrane. And so when studded tires come in, they start poking holes into it. So
How do they expose that? Do they grind it?
they get in there and start chipping away with the jackhammers. Yes.
What's the bonded on that? Because I think it was prior to FY 24.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's definitely
so.
23.
And then what's the status?
The statuses were completed our design development drawings as of this week. And we're bringing on a construction manager to help us out with this project, and they'll be reviewing the construction drawings moving forward. This facility here being a judicial building, so upstairs we have the courts. So part of that problem is working with the courts, the noise, because once you start a jackhammer down here, you'll feel and hear it throughout the whole building. So we have to work around that. We also have to work around all the other people parking in the facility. So that's where construction manager is coming in to help provide a plan and state that, they need this much section at a time to work, park over in the other areas, and then we just start swapping everybody around to get through that whole process.
Do you remember the bonded amount?
I do.
Okay.
Find it.
Madam Chair is digging around for it.
Well, I'll find it. I know where it is.
We don't need it right now.
I know where it is. Gotta find that spreadsheet.
L6, Central Services roof replacement. The photo here is a low sloped copper roof, which typically is known as a 100-year roof. It didn't make it that long. It's got a lot of pinholes in it, and for reasons why we don't know. And so what's happening is below this one roof is all of the postal shop for BGS. And some of that equipment that's in there is worth over $500,000. And so when it's leaking in, it becomes an issue. They can't necessarily, because it's computerized this day and age, and with hard drives that are in there, it's not something that they can quickly shut down without damaging the hard drive and the software. So we're looking to replace that low roof this year.
Wait.
What's the pitch on that? Do you
I
know?
don't recall, it is a low
It
pitch.
seems low for copper.
Yes.
Like it seems below 4 or 3, 12.
Yes, I would say so. The snow does slide off.
Huh.
Right, it used to have you can see where some of the patching is on the lower right-hand side, there's a little gray part. It used to have ice guards up there to hold it back, so it just slowly just roll right through.
what are you going to, Robert?
It's a membrane, yes,
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
membrane.
Oh, member.
Yes, instead of copper, it'd be the rubber or
Yeah.
synthetic type of thing.
There's no snowball's chance that that's a defective materials, like
Copper?
warranty. And if big copper was pitting like that, seems,
I don't know, it could be. But the warranty, there's not a 100-year or.
no, it's just like
warranty on that.
free, it's gotta be,
It's well over 20 years old.
yeah,
It could be that the substrate underneath also is
it's causing it,
could be
yeah.
causing it. I don't know.
Galvanic action or
Right.
something.
We have taken parts of it apart and cannot figure out why. We've had many roofers out there to try and give us a reason why, and it's just not there.
It's just the splits in it aren't great either. It should be all the way to the peak. That's not ideal either.
That is true. 20+ years ago, though, the roof was done, you didn't have everybody who could produce one single sheet. And
Got it. Yeah. Anyway,
Am I related? Sorry.
Mhm.
Our discussion yesterday, we're talking about the same print shop that's got $500,000 worth of equipment in it.
Mhm.
And
No, each piece of equipment could be upwards of $500,000.
each piece of equipment.
Yes,
And how many pieces of equipment do we have? Roughly
Uh,
6.
30, 20,
30?
30 pieces in.
the print shop we're talking about is DOC.
Oh,
DOC, that's in the St. Albans, that's the St. Albans Correctional
I
Facility. This
That's what I
is,
said.
this is at
Totally different.
This is owned by BGS. It is the spot where it's off the interstate at the Middlesex exit.
Hmm.
And we have what used to be the secure residential facility that has now been converted to the juvenile facility to
Mhm.
hold 4 juveniles. We have the archives for the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah.
And then BGS has their print shop, mail place there.
It's a different one.
Completely different.
Yep. Just looking for $3 million.
Ain't gonna find it
You're not
here.
finding it here.
3 million is coming out of a whole different budget.
State house expansion and design. A little bit, so what you see here in the photo is the 2 ellipses, the red and the blue. The blue area is the one that we first started out with. We received some ARPA funding for this, was how to make the rear entrance as you come into the loading dock area, because that is a public entrance and it's the only accessible public entrance unless you're coming into the Lincoln Tunnel. And so how to make that into an area that somebody could be processed coming in the next pandemic. COVID probably won't be the next pandemic, but that's what the ARPA funds were for, and how to then make that work in that whole integration. And the red ellipse was where we're also looking into was the code, because we haven't done a code review in this facility over a number of years. And in this area here, one of the areas that was pointed out was that there is no second means of egress out of the Senate chamber. So there would be an exterior stair tower of some sort to provide that second means. Everywhere else basically has a second means.
We can also discuss the zip line in this project.
That's the question.
Is it blind?
We had also discussed a zip line in this project. Did you think, lady? Don't know where that went, I just moved.
it's a zip line. I think it's-
That too, right, we had-
Had a lot of zip lines. But
Bill?
The footprint of their fire poles are
we
really.
even had a zip line
Is that-
national down, remember?
Yes.
I don't have a
Zip line bills.
Well,
I have a question off topic, but it came up when Kevin said something. When are we getting that proposal for the $3.1 million? Just real quick, I thought that was due.
we've got language that our 3 folks have worked on. They're passing it by TOC. At 1 o'clock, we have an opening in our agenda.
Perfect.
So we're gonna be bringing that up at 1 o'clock.
Awesome.
We just had to work on it a little. Thanks for reminding.
So we're still in the schematic design phase of this, and as you heard, a little bit of a discussion about that yesterday about with the HVAC project here for the State House and how that they may or may not integrate it together. And we're at that impasse right now until we can make some decisions to start moving forward as to one or the other, or and or both. Getting us through this.
To be determined.
120 State Street, across the street here, Montclair, at the HVAC steam line interior renovation project. That was built on Cornerstone 46, I believe 1946. Hasn't really been touched, has steam lines. And the steam lines that are coming into the building run up through the exterior walls. There's a void that each of those supply and return lines run into. For each floor, they come out into the concrete floor, do a nice little U, come back up, and then expose to the radiants that are there. And those lines are starting to fail. And part of that process, if the line does get into the concrete floor, you're having to go in and chip out the concrete floor to make that repair. Their DMV over the years, Department of Motor Vehicles, has gone through and through servers and some of their space having to add air conditioning. So I'm going to say the first 2 floors are air conditioned via more of a central unit. The other floors, as you can see in here, have window units hanging out of them. That's how it is done. So what we'd be looking to do is go in and renovate that space, convert from steam to hot water, and do a complete loop on each floor to provide that means of fresh air. Right now, there is no real means of fresh air coming into the upper floors other than opening the windows. And so we'd have probably a rooftop unit and a chiller to make that possible. And then because of all the ductwork we have to run, you're going to be moving out all of the partitions, furniture that's in that space, removing the ceiling. So at the same time, we'll be upgrading the electrical and redoing the ceilings. Probably the carpet to it, and then bringing everybody back in. So it'll be a shuffleboard game of who goes where initially to house them while we work in the space and then move them back. And I say 10 years ago, we did this over at 153 State Street. And
We've been working on 120 State Street many, many years,
yes,
different projects.
yes, we have. This should be, and it was leading up to this. We've done the main electrical lines coming up through the building. The service no longer meets code, so that would be upgraded in this. We've done all the restrooms. They have been overhauled. So this is sort of that next phase to finish this project out.
And the building's full. It's one of the full buildings.
In the Capitol complex.
Yes, I believe
And it
DMV is in there every day.
Yeah, and it wasn't impacted by the flood.
No, it was not. It's still high and dry. We did have, when we went in there the afternoon of the flood, there was about 3 inches of water in the basement floor. And the reason being for that, because we had done prior year, we put an entrance on the back and the stair towers and also somewhat flood proof around the foundation of full drain. There was a Fernco fitting, and that's a rubber fitting that goes on a piece of cast iron. And that had failed. That had pulled apart. So the past deputy commissioner and I had at that point in time found a screwdriver and whatnot, but that kept working. So if it wasn't for that, probably it would not have seen that much water at all in the test.
And if you hadn't done that work, it would have seen quite a bit of water.
What above and beyond that day.
Yes, thank God. Well, so
Pittsford Academy, major renovations. Years ago, we did what was known as the East Cottage. In this photo here, what you're looking at is an entrance into the main building. And to the right of it is the West Cottage. And to the left here that you see here is where the kitchen is and the cafeteria. And they're also connected. They're known as the arcades. What they are is they're a curved corridor, basically. And right now they're unconditioned space going from the main building to the college. As I said earlier, the East Cottage was renovated several years ago, and that was plaster was removed down to the studs. New insulation put in to comply with the energy code at the time, new heat pumps, and it was used for the fire academy for bedroom space when they were there instead of renting out hotel space. Some of the windows were also either replaced and or upgraded. Same thing is planned for the main building in the West Cottage. The other issue that we've had here is over time, this used to be a sanitarium for tuberculosis back in the day before the state owned it. And so the loads have changed over time in an office space and whatnot. And so we do have some structural issues in there that we have to take care of. Some of the other areas and somebody over the years, not that I'm aware of, since I've been here, have, removed a beam or two to make a larger space or something like that. And so we got to get in there and fix that at that same time. And this would be a complete rehab of bringing in the new water line from the curb into the building, all the sprinkler system, fire alarm, all new finishes, air handling system, and this work.
So for folks, this is in Pittsford. It's our public safety and fire training center. This is where your local police departments, your state police train. So when you talk about the training academy, the Pittsford Training Academy, this is it. It also has another part of this property is where our fire department folks are trained as well. So this is the hub of training of our public safety as well as our fire departments. So that,
Does this also include training for volunteer firefighters or just
I think it's also.
Yes, it is. So everybody for
anyone?
little I know is level 1 or whatever, I think they have to go through the same with, I think, being a police officer, you're going through this.
I'm very familiar with the police side, but just.
You like uniforms.
Especially pink.
Yeah.
Well, whatever,
It's
whatever.
floral. It's
It's
not
coral,
pink.
thank
Forgive me,
you, thank you, yeah, we're gonna say, it's coral. Yeah,
It is very floral.
okay, let's focus on the present.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just want, this is where a lot of our local folks go for training and also our state police train here. Our correctional officers do not train here. They have a separate place within DOC that they train for correctional officers. At times, folks have wanted to bring correctional officers here to be trained. I think in one particular time they were trained here,
Yes.
but they're not trained here anymore for that. So we'll talk with the Criminal Justice Training Council. We'll get the folks in and go over what they would like for renovations. Sometimes we have a line item for them and sometimes we don't.
Is that all slate roof?
Yes,
Oh, boy.
it's not actually the slate we've
I think it should.
shared over the years. It's not that bad. As you can see, I don't know how well it shows, but over the peak of the entrance, you can see there is a little dip of the ridge, but.
Yeah, there is. That's all right.
Yeah, yes. it's-
If you were 200-year-old, you have.
Exactly.
You're rich.
You'd have a little.
Do you share the name of the person or people that know how to repair that?
There are roofers out there that
Oh, yeah.
take that, so.
We've had a hard time finding one down
Yeah.
Lebanon.
Yeah.
Our church does, yeah.
Vermont Roofing?
Vermont Roofing.
If it's a large enough project, there's others out there like Rod Roofing on St. Johnsburg will go.
Maybe the logo star. Yeah, you've got some insight.
Hey, we got. Thank you.
You could get a new jacket, like McGuire.
Right?
Put a sign up.
Better than this, what was it called?
It's the bloomer.
No, but display board, what did we?
It was a, it
Yeah.
was a directional sign, wasn't it? A directional sign or something? Anyway, on YouTube, folks.
Yeah.
I would say poor Joe.
Next,
DCF Short-Term Secure Stabilization Project.
there we go.
This
Got a
project,
picture of.
this here is the potential future facility that, the concept that was put together by the construction firm that we're working with in the A&E firm, just the concept of what it perhaps could look like. This is for right now, we've been looking in Virgins. at our property with Jones, just like this. And so this was some funding to help us do this. We've also used some of that funding in the temporary.
Yeah, go ahead, try.
What's the resistance on this compared to the resistance on this?
You may not be at liberty
Yeah.
to say much.
I think so.
All right.
Yeah,
It's-
they presented something that they would like to the state. So that's all being negotiated. They're talking about different items for that. I don't think they have a zoning change. Do they have a
Actually,
zoning?
this is another one that the government facility was not, it's a low residential is what it's zoned, and they do have a public overlay. No, and that is where the job corps itself is in all our buildings that are all clustered together in Regens. They have drawn that and made that a what was inside of that would be all set.
So this is state-owned property. This is where the old week school used to be, way back. If you grew up in Vermont, you were a boy and you weren't behaving, you were threatened to go to the week school.
Once or twice.
I'm not going there. And then we closed that. I don't remember when we closed that, in the 80s, 90s, we closed that. 80s, must have been 80s when we opened up Woodside.
Yes,
Yeah,
probably around that time.
probably around, that's early 80s, we closed up Woodside. So this is really the replacement for Woodside.
That is correct.
And they're working, the state's working with the town of Virginia, the city of Virginia. And also, we are looking at a design build model, which means we do not use bonded dollars to build it. We contract out with a design build firm that would design the buildings, and build. And then they would lease the building back to the state. So the money would come out of the general fund, out of the appropriations committee, would not come out of bonded dollars, because we are not building the building as a state, and we're not owning the building as a state. We own the land underneath. We have agreed to a lease time of longer than 10 years. We did that last year in the capital bill. We still own the land, but we're leasing it to the design build company. Design build company would build the building or buildings, would negotiate a lease payment that we pay them to lease the building for X number of years with the potential of purchasing the building down the road. That's the model we're looking at this point. So we'll have more information on this as the session proceeds.
Week school closed in 79.
79, and Woodside was the big argument back in 83, 84 to build it. Sure.
Just why are you doing that kind of program with this?
A design build, you
Yeah,
mean? Take the pressure off the capital bill. Got it. Because we just don't have the capacity with our bonding capacity decreasing. And we've got some real major projects coming online, like the Women's Correctional Facility, and keeping up with our municipal needs for water and sewer, and keeping up with court needs and just maintenance of some of our other state buildings. We just don't have the capacity in bonded dollars.
Yeah, it sounds.
So we are shifting it to the general fund, which will increase our state budget. And the one thing that we always need to be cognizant of in this committee is what we do and how that may shift to the general fund. We need to be cognizant of that and give our appropriation committees a heads up. This is coming down the pike for you folks, because that's going to build the base of our state budget. Build the base. Not a one-time expenditure when you start entering into leasing, paying for leases. So, but we'll be looking at this, I'm sure.
Okay.
Next year or two.
Where are the Washington County Superior Court renovations? This building was built in 83. Also on a nice little angle to the lot, because when it was built in 83, we was thinking with an open office design, you just open the windows and the air flows through and everybody stays cool. It was also set up to, at night, exhaust air was to suck out the warm air in the building and bring in cool air through the windows. But over time, the whole place has basically become offices built out and blocking that flow. But also the climate in Vermont has changed a little bit too. And so the courts who are on the entire first floor and half of the second floor have always had air conditioning. The rest of the building did not. And this is not a recent photo. You don't see any air conditioners sticking out of the windows, but just about every other window would have a window unit if you drove by today on the upper 2 floors. And so that is part of it. It's there's only back in the day when it was constructed, there's only 4 zones in the building. So it's north, south, east, and west. And so when you have space in there and the sun's coming in there, it depends on where that thermostat, whether it's is warm or cold. That's part of it. There's no fresh air really coming into those offices because there's none of that internal ductwork. And then we get into the court side of things where the way the court functions, and judiciary will certainly have to talk more about it, but it doesn't work well for them. There is no sally port to be bringing a detainee in and then exiting the vehicle inside of a secure area. They're out in the parking lot and they come through the same door that the employees and or judges that come through. And there's a 3-way split in the back hallway where you have interactions from the detainees coming in who then go to their holding cells. The jury walks down that same hallway and so does the judge. And so that's one of the other things. There is no separation. So there is a potential of an interaction. Courts, I believe, does well in this, but there's always that issue that could happen. And then some of their needs to have changed over the years. So we are looking to come up with a program with this to decide what to do. We've gone out, we've looked at land to go elsewhere. Because one of those issues being is, as I mentioned earlier, when you're renovating in a space, it's very noisy. Like here, judiciary is also recording everything. So your contractor just can't keep working. So we'd have to potentially set up a temporary courtroom or courtrooms in order for them to function. So that's why we're looking potentially off-site.
How's the search been going?
Not well, basically. So I think that we have to look back into a lot more, and we've done it.
No luck in Berlin.
We haven't gone back out to do that search. I think initially we were looking in the Barry area as opposed to Berlin. So we'd have to go back out and do another search to expand. But we haven't had continued follow-up conversations with the city of Barry about that.
Okay.
So we're still working on chasing some of that, but that is what this is for.
Be continued.
How much land are you looking for? How?
I don't recall, because again, it's not just judiciary in the building, the state's attorney's in there, Department of Children and Families, probation and parole. And so whether or not they could stay behind and stay in that space and only judiciary relocates. So I recall how the RFP, what size property we're looking. This is flood-wise though, was high and dry during the flood. And all the floods in Barry, because when it was built up higher elevation. So it's a slab on grade, there's no basement, so it did well in there.
It's just a hard place to get in and out of.
It's very little parking in the back, and your property line is bounded by 3 roads and then the property out back. So there's probably room for 15 cars. Some of those are for judges intake, bringing the detainees in and lots of that, accessible parking. So those spaces are taken up relatively quick. Special teams facility in storage. This is 2 different groups, the urban search and rescue team, along with the state hazmat, 3 teams, and then the Marine Unit with the Vermont State Police. I'll start with the latter first. The Vermont State Police Marine Unit was looking to be constructed on the new public safety facility in Williston. And due to the cost of that at the time, it was removed from the construction. And so we were looking for alternate means, locations for them to go into. Right now, they're being housed in their old facility still in Williston. So we want to find a home for them to go to get them out of that so we could potentially sell that site. And along with that, the urban search and rescue and hazmat teams are located in V-Trans building in Colchester. V-Trans is, would like their space back. And so we're looking to co-locate all of them roughly in the, Chittenden County area where they have the most responses to. And so that's where we're looking at. So similar to the juvenile facility, this is a design build lease. And we're in the process right now of developing what the building would look like, the size of that building, how everybody interacts and the likes of that.
And it's also fire safety, Department of Fire Safety.
Yes, fire safety also, right now they're at least based in Williston, and we're looking at, if possible, could they too be located in the same location? Yes. But the majority of the space is really for some of the storage of the vehicles that are constantly coming and going, whether it's USAR hazmat or the Marine Division. The Marine Division has roughly 2 seasons, winter and summer. So, they have all the snow machines and the boats and the 4-wheelers and the likes of that they respond to all over the state. Rutland Field Station, another public safety facility. This is to replace the facility that's in Rutland, on the north end of Rutland. Years ago, forget how, before we built Williston, long before that, 2010, 2011, I think, we purchased land in North Clarendon for them to go to. So this North Clarendon site was, as a replacement of Rutland Field Station, was first initially, and then we were looking at doing some minor upgrades to keep Williston in their old building, and it was just too cost prohibitive with the leaks and everything that they had. So it was really about moving them out. So Williston went first. Rutland's back on the table. So this is to start now with the design of the facility on the site. And the public safety facilities used to be somewhat of a cookie cutter project when they started out in Derby back in the 2000, about in there. And that was what we could come up with. It was a design that could work for all the facilities, and depending on the personnel and where they're located, it could shrink and or expand because of that layout. And that has worked in Derby, St. Albans, New Haven, Royalton, Westminster, and Berlin, or Middlesex. We moved to Berlin. We broke that mold because we put them into the old public state library. And they were able to fit in there with just interior renovations. And so that somewhat broke that mold. The one in Williston is close to that, but Williston is such a very large building. It's also a PSAP. The other PSAP is in Westminster. So they had some changes going to there because of the size of that, but basically somewhat of the same layout. And we'd be looking at the same thing down in Rutland or North Clarendon. Energy code has changed. So still taking that, some of the walls, maybe a little thicker to the insulation, the same with the roof and the likes of that.
So Joe, where it's going to move to in North Clarendon? The transportation department's already there and the DMV for Rutland's already there? Or is this all being proposed?
This here is the existing site that we see for here at DMV.
Okay.
Is off to the left. Public safety is into the right, and then in the center, and the upper right is where V-Trans is. Now we're going down closer to the Clarendon Airport.
Oh, all right.
It's the intersection of, what was it, 103
And 7.
it's right there. Right at that turn,
Yep.
there was an old field
Yeah.
on the left-hand side, and that's where it is going. Randolph Center, we have the Vermont Agriculture Environmental Lab heat plant. This project here originally was in the original design and bid, and it was done as a deduct alternate. And we took that out because we are connected to the Vermont University's heat plant. During the design, I don't think it was caught on that the colleges do not run their heat plant at 60 PSI. The autoclaves that are inside of the heat, the lab require a minimum of 50. So they've been giving us up to 48. It has been working, but the other problem, they have two other problems. It's not a constant 48 PSI that they're giving us. Sometimes it drops down to 20. And the other issue being is they do not use their heat plant during the summer. They like here in Montpelier and Waterboro shut down. So now they're having to use a large boiler to maintain the steam coming to the lab in that short cycles. Meaning it comes on, it tops off that steam pressure a little bit and then shuts off and waits for that to drop, and then it restarts again. It's constantly doing that. There's just not a heavy load for that the oil gun to come on and stay on. So that's one of the issues. So we were looking at building the heat plant so that we could then provide continuous steam pressure that's required and during the summer season. And the heat plant was as designed, so we should be able to go and permitted. So we're checking to make sure everything's still good today with what we had thought. And then we would go forth with that construction. And that would be a system that is similar here. The picture that is here is at the mental health facility in Berlin at the state hospital. And also for the summer seasons when the load is not that great, to have propane boilers, both for backup and for summer use.
This lab was up at the Waterbury complex. And it was flooded out in our rain. So we had to replace that lab. And we did not do it in Waterbury. We moved it down to where VTC was. And we negotiated with VTC so that they could also possibly use this as an educational venue for some of their students. So it does work for our Agency of Agriculture as well as our environmental lab for Agency of Natural Resources. So if you send up water supplies, drinking water supplies to see, well, I don't know, that would go to the Department of Health. wouldn't
I
it? I think
I
that,
do test milk,
yeah,
hydrometers, stuff like that. So they do quite a bit of different things down there, weights and measures. So. Next up, we have these statewide for electric vehicle charging stations. So this funding here is to help out with, because BGS has a lot of fleet vehicles. They're, going from office to office space, be able to go in and then charge those electric vehicles that we have, and then be able to get the return trip back. Presently, the photos that we have here is the one on the left is over here at 136 State Street in the parking lot. The other one on the right-hand side, that is at our Southern State Correctional Facility. So we're looking to install these throughout state office complexes and/or buildings so that those people can then charge as their fleet vehicles are going.
Is that impacted by, that recently changed, federal money for this recently changed, were you using any federal?
There
Meaning,
may be some federal funds watching coming through ACCD and $1 million that we're looking to do, and the president has not changed.
so if one of these EV charging stations is at our public state office building, can a person from the public charge their vehicle at these, or is it just for our fleet? Just for state employees?
I think during the off hour, probably yes. I think at 136, you could go over there and do that. In certain other areas, we're putting them in areas that are not behind gates and the likes of that. So it is possible that, evening hours, it's open, you can still do that. For the state, it would not be a charge.
There would not be.
Or for the state, for the public usage, there would be.
For the public, there would be.
So these are then metered,
Yes. There's an app for that.
We were pretty clear about that. The public uses it, they have to pay for.
That was installed a while ago. Yes.
You're missing us, huh, Wayne?
Instruction for you.
Keep going, Joe.
Here in Montpelier again, 133-109 State Street, planning tunnel and waterproofing, and along with repaving Aiken Avenue. A part of this, or what we're looking to do right now, is just focus on the area that is underneath the Aiken Avenue. We still have to work through FEMA on what we have to do with the rest of that tunnel because the tunnel would flood. And as you can see here, it leads from, goes between the side door on Aiken Avenue of 133 State Street. This photo here shows exactly where the tunnel is coming into the rear corner of 111 State Street, the Supreme Court building. And then there's an internal walkway that would take you into 109 State Street, the pavilion building. So basically what we're doing is, it's had leaks over the years, it's waterproofing. The flood didn't come in through the leaks that we have. A lot of it is cutting off from the State House and the ledge that's underneath the State House and just coming into the sides and the tops of the uphill side. And we're just having infiltration. We've tried sealing those cracks and by injection, and it just isn't enough. So we're looking at, we would have to then go in and completely seal it. But with FEMA, there's other discussions of how to, probably putting doors on both ends of the tunnel so you could not, so it would not flood in a flood event. But it's mainly used for our steam loop. That was originally designed for.
What?
The steam loop that runs from the heat plant all the way through.
So for the heat plant, you know where the heat plant is?
Yeah.
So for the heat plant, when you're coming in the morning, on the cold mornings, and you see that tall smokestack across the way here with the smoke coming out, we have biomass boilers there. I forgot how many we got, 3. And that is heating all of pretty much the Capitol complex.
Central complex, except for the buildings beyond 6 Baldwin on Baldwin Street. So
That's where our heat comes from. And there's a whole loop.
so the whole loop runs through all the buildings. That does that. So that's what the tunnel was originally constructed for. The other tunnels that go across State Street are just for the steam pipes themselves because the amount of utilities that are in the road, it was just not possible. Otherwise, we probably would have done that also.
My question is not super important, but is the tunnel, since it flooded, is it passable?
It is the problem, mainly is the buildings on both sides also got flooded. And right now, we're just not allowing people to be walking through there because it's, the debris that's there.
Okay.
We're still, because we haven't settled up with FEMA on what we're gonna do for the future.
Yep.
Anything that got wet that could not be dried, like metal studs and the likes of that, so plaster sheet rock, all that's gone. And so it's just somewhat of a wide open space. So it's not passable.
Tours for the new people. So,
Do something.
Have you been down in there?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Take them up to the dome.
Oh, yeah, that's the other place I was thinking, the dome.
Been there. They got us up there for the orientation.
Nice.
Did you sign your name?
Yeah.
No.
The last one up is 11 State Street. The other end of this tunnel that I was just talking about, the renovation of the stack area. The Department of Library shrunk down to a size that they were relocated to Barry. This space became vacant. Presently, it is, we took out the stacks and have temporarily moved judiciary into there. They were in lease space over at 112 State Street. And we have renovated the upper stack area for judiciary to have office space. There's a light renovation to get them in. The lower floor, the first floor of 111 in the stack area, the library space, was basically replacing an auditorium. So we went in there and removed all the stacks, painted the walls, carpet, a couple of monitors on the wall, and that was to replace the auditorium that was lost in the pavilion.
So I'm assuming Republicans caucus.
Yeah.
Is where some stacks were, then been torn down and got converted to a temporary auditorium.
It's on the first floor of the
on
second
the
floor
first.
judiciary's office space.
So the second floor where we have overflow, like for joint meetings, or where the Democrats caucus.
That's in the connector between 109 and 111. So if you're in that space, you see a set of stairs that go nowhere to a wall. Just beyond that wall is this space here that's in the photo.
Mhm.
It was a no relevant question, but I had this, I was gonna ask you. The other day I was in there, where does this garage
That's where
door
it
go?
goes. That's where.
It's a fire door, and when both sides are being used as a library space, it was a fire shutter. So there's also the one at the stairs and one to the left of it also, because that was just an opening to the wall to allow airflow going through in sight. And those have been blocked off because the judiciary is now on the other side.
And what is the stack area?
It's the actual library book stacks.
Right there.
It's called, so,
Sure, that's all shelving.
Shelving.
Is that shelving?
yes, it's shelving.
Libraries, they call it stacks.
So
So is that gone now?
it is now gone, yes,
The one with the connector where we,
yes.
that's all gone.
The stacks were 2 stories tall in this area here. And the vertical post, if you will, of the shelving went all the way up. It was, I think there were 4 levels, maybe 5 levels in this area. There was a marble floor in between the books that you could walk down and do a complete loop around. You know, the Barry Aldrich Library has a similar stack area just like this.
What did you do with all that shelving? Did it go to surplus?
Circles did not want it. They could not find anybody who wanted this.
What'd you do?
It got recycled.
Recycle. Lot of weight there.
A
lot of metal. Like pretty overwhelming when you stood there and you looked up.
Yes,
Ooh. That could fall.
that's it.
Yeah.
And got through it.
Right, so next week, when we get the budget, Governor, on Tuesday, we'll start picking away at individual testimony for each individual line item. But it's going to be really important to have this document still available, to have this spreadsheet still available, because you'll be going back to this. That, and we're gonna kind of shift gears next week. It's gonna be a little familiar, but it'll be a little different when we start taking testimony on each line item. We do you go in a lot deeper, ask a lot of questions, and you have to go back to previous fiscal years. See how much money they've gotten, how much money's gone out the door, how much money's encumbered, how much money they got left. And for the next 2 fiscal years, how soon they're going to get out the door those dollars that have been recommended for FY 26 and 27. We've got to connect the dots. That's what we're going to start doing next week, connecting all these dots. Ding dong. Any questions of Joe? Who's here?
Thank you.
So let's come back at 1 o'clock. We're gonna work on our recommends for appropriations committees or committee and the budget BAA. Then we'll go from there. So